We are celebrating the National Wildlife Week, which is concluding on the 7th. And as a part of this, we've put together a special set of programs for you this Sunday, beginning with Dr. Purabi Bose's talk on forest science communication using arts, followed by a fantastic lunch by Shreya Katyayini at the MOG Cafe, where she's preparing food based in Bihari cuisine, where it's the simple man's food but rooted in nature. We will also be hosting films from Around Class Esteem, which is a not-for-profit organization that works with forest science communication through multimedia techniques. So beginning with today's talk, Dr. Purabi Bose is going to talk to us about forest science communication. She believes that whenever science and the arts struggle, it is the wisdom of the indigenous people that prevails. Through the lens of real protagonists, this talk will showcase ways to communicate forest science using audio and visual media. This talk will explore how photo books and films work as tools in Purabi's scientific work, on amplifying the role of indigenous people as forest guardians across the globe. Dr. Purabi Bose is India's first and only woman to be bestowed the honor of International Fellow by the Royal Swedish Academy of Agriculture and Forestry in Stockholm. One of her passions is in simplifying forest land science to communicate using arts with a diverse audience to connect with indigenous wisdom. I now welcome Dr. Purabi to the stand to...
I thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this space to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. So when I was small, I grew up in a very economically backward family. And one of the things that you experience during that is you don't have the luxury of many things that today we have around. For example, when there is a power cut, you don't have the generator, so then there was completely dark. And as a child, I used to sit outside with my mother in the veranda, and there was a beautiful drumstick tree in our garden. And the drumstick tree had a trunk which was chopped off, so it had made kind of a bed. It was slightly curvy and had branches all around. And at night, when there was a power cut, you would see that there's a nest of bird sparrows who have given little hatched babies. And at night, the babies would make a lot of sounds because they wanted to eat food. And at night, of course, the sparrow mother and father were not able to bring any insects. But what they did was they would go and collect the fireflies around around our area, and would bring the fireflies and put it in the nest upside down. And the firefly, on the back of the firefly, the light would glitter, right? And the birds will remain, the kids with the small babies would be completely quiet, and they will be watching that thing glow. And after some time, of course, the firefly don't sustain the topsy-turvy lifestyle for long. Then again, the sparrows would go around, hunt and bring the... So this is what I grew up enjoying the nature as, and I think this is not what you learn. This is something that you observe, you listen, and you remember it for so long that you start appreciating nature. And that's one part of how I learned about fireflies and the symbiotic relations between, not so symbiotic, but symbiotic relations between the different animals and the wildlife. So fast forward, I went to Brazil to work in Amazon with indigenous people, and this is Brazil nut fruit. And it's one of the tallest trees in Amazonian forest. And when this nut, it looks like a coconut shell, but when it comes in a velocity of 360 kilometer, when it falls down from the top part of the tree, you need to have helmet on your head, otherwise you are like your head is kind of crushed out. And this is another reason why I think what you learn every day from the nature is that even though this even though the Brazil nuts are something that we all enjoy, but this is the kind of children who collect the nuts from the forest. These are the indigenous children, and they are so familiar with how to collect it and how to crush it and then to collect them. And what you see on the top of the helmet is the private companies which are being employed in the region for the indigenous people who are familiar with the region. But mostly the children are also engaged in this kind of work. So it's not just the elderly, but also the children are engaged in this, and that brings us to this questioning of how do we understand nature, how do we understand forest, and how should we communicate with the citizens. And to do that, what we came up with was this idea of having a photo book which would be engaging citizens of all around the world, and they would share with us a photograph and a story. And that's how this Castanha or the Brazil nut story came up also, because they shared, and this is a part of the book that came up with all the beautiful photographs of around the world. And this is again another photograph from the book shared by another citizen from Brazil, Icaro, and this is the cacao, or from where you get the chocolate from, and the seeds, and it's called gold seeds because it has very high value. And then the idea was to talk about how the gender impacts the forest, land, agroforestry, and the nature as such. Now this is something that the photographs is another very important aspect of how one visualizes and how one narrates the story. This is from Cameroon. The same thing goes around in Gabon. Bushmeat is very essential element of many indigenous people. It has been a traditional lifestyle for them. There is a lot of controversy related to it, whether one should have bushmeat or whether it destroys the wildlife, whether it destroys the nature. But it also talks about the identity. It also talks about the culture and the way of living of many of the indigenous people. So she is cutting a wild pig that is not easily accessible. It's illegal. But then, as a woman, most of the meat traders, bushmeat traders in that part of the world are women. And as a part of the gender lens, this again comes out very strongly of how women can play a very significant role in kind of establishing the network with the traders, with the people who are hunting, so the hunters, and then with the marketing people. So it might seem that women are not so strong in many parts of the world, but these are the invisible women who are kind of sharing such trading with different aspects of nature and wildlife. Now the controversy that comes up with here is whether it's allowed or not. That might be one controversy, but the fact is that it's part of their culture, and how the demand is increasing, not by the indigenous people, but from the outsiders, the locals, and that is pushing them to go further and establish a wider market. So, yeah. So this is the bushmeat, which is a very lucrative, and this is a story that comes along with the photograph that they shared with us. So coming to India, I think one of the important elements is that we are talking about the indigenous people, and in India is not recognized, indigenous people as a term is not a recognized term. We call them Adivasi or scheduled tribe. But then it's for the abroad, all the newspapers often use Adivasis or indigenous people and forest dwelling Indians. And eviction is one of the very common feature when we talk about conservation, wildlife conservation. And therefore there is this contradiction of, do we really want conservation in the way the forest conservation is managed, or do we want more of people-oriented, where people are also part and parcel and then they coexist. So during my work of last 2 decades, one of the important studies that I find is 90% of the policymakers are only relying on social media. They are not reading any of the scientific papers. So that puts a lot of question mark on why one should fund the research if they are only relying on social media. Do we really, does it make valuable output of investing so much? And yet on the other hand, science has yet to acknowledge the indigenous knowledge, because the way the science has elevated itself in a way that, you know, indigenous knowledge is somewhere at the bottom rank, and only when it is peer reviewed, only when it is published, then it is accepted as something that is scientifically approved. Otherwise, indigenous knowledge is not accepted as a significant knowledge. Yet, wisdom continues to be an important element in many parts of, this is from Peru, in many parts of Amazon, especially the women who are the carriers of traditional medicinal knowledge or carriers of traditional ways of farming, because most of the farming happens in the forest area, forest land, and it's a small scale, but it kind of combines the local nature, combines the way that it imbibes with the weather, the climate, and it's kind of, the knowledge is mostly based with the women here. But as we are moving to this more modern world of social media, the highlight is always fake versus fact. Either were like, you know, contrarian images. So it's indigenous versus wildlife conservation, then indigenous people versus extractive industries. For example, the current demand of having the electric vehicles is so high. We want to talk about that, but nobody's talking about lithium mining in major parts of Latin America, where the indigenous people are suffering, and also the wildlife, because so far people thought that salinas are just a vast patch of salty marshland and it has no nature and wildlife. But there has been a lot of studies that shows there is a significant wildlife that's also going to get affected with the mining. And then commercial plantations, such as we have rubber plantation or oil palm plantations, which kind of again destroying the large patch of forest lands across the globe, and of course the loss of biodiversity. So the idea behind it is that most of the population continues to manage the non-timber forest products, which is this small minor forest, but then it's kind of not recognized, because we talk only about timber so far, so much of timber from valuable timber of the forest, but to assess the market value of non-timber forest products is something one would understand it has more value compared to just talking about timber. And it's often understood that agroforestry is where if you have forest, agriculture, and the agroforestry where you grow some trees around, then it affects in a positive way to women's empowerment, I would say, some degree. And then there is also this aspect of individual rights, whether the forest land should be given the individual rights or collective. And the focus is more on people want more collective rights, because then they can manage the forest in a better way. There is always this contrarian aspect that global forest tree cover is increasing, but nobody is talking about, you know, what kind of trees are being grown, whether it's a plantation or and how the deforestation happens. So that's another aspect that one misses out, and what kind of trees that is being planted or that is being protected. This is again from Philippines, where the mangoes has been a traditional part of women's livelihood, most of the indigenous women's livelihood. But promoting industrial agro-food such as mangoes, it kind of also challenges the idea of what they have been traditionally doing as an indigenous people. They are changing their lifestyle now to promote the agro plantations, and that's another contrarian dimension that one can talk about. This is from the photograph, I think is from Ecuador. And it talks about the eviction of people, because so far the idea is that when you have wildlife reserve or wildlife conservation, then you have to remove the people who have been traditionally living inside the forest area for a long time, because it has to be reserved in such a way. And one such study that in Batwa pygmies in Uganda and the Baiga tribes of Chhattisgarh, they have been having the traditional skills of managing their livelihood by hunting. And when I say hunting, it doesn't mean the big animals. It's just for their daily requirement of proteins. And that's how they have been living. So one of the strange just to talk about Baiga and Batwa. In Batwa, the people, when they were removed from the Uganda's reserve forest, what happened is that most of them were not getting what they have been consuming, the protein-rich food, and they went into alcoholism. And most of the people started suffering with depending on alcoholism. And the same with Baiga tribe. They have been traditionally weaving with the lianas, the one that you see on the trees that falls with like a rope thing. So they have been making mats out of it. But since now they are not allowed to enter the forest, what they do, they still have the habit of knitting. So they have to express themselves. So they go to the local market, they buy the jute bags which are made of plastics. They bring those jute bags and they remove the strings and they make the mats out of it. So that's another part of the story of what happens when the eviction happens and you resettle them in a different location altogether. There are certain aspects of Sweden cultivation, maybe you know in terms of jhum cultivation, some people, where you clear the land and then you do the farming, and after 4 or 5 years then you leave the land there to rejuvenate and the trees go back and it's a nature takes over, and then you continue this cycle. But there has been in 1970s a lot of negative studies that was shared saying that shifting cultivation or switching cultivation is not ideal. And this is changing again now because the studies are showing that actually if done in an appropriate way, this practice is more beneficial than compared to any other modern technology, because it stores more carbon, it kind of allows the biodiversity to come back, and it kind of allows the nature to flourish in a way that one would like to. So that brings us to the end of the talk, and we can have a small discussion here after the talk, and then I can share part of the film clipping. So basically, when we talk about how to bridge wisdom and science, it's not that we are saying the science is not important. What is science we need for data, method, and information, but wisdom is also that can bring in more of this important subtle element, and that's caring. In science doesn't care, you have the numbers when you talk about, when you do science research, but when you do wisdom research, you give names to the animals. Like we lost very famous personality, Jane, and she has been giving the name to the primates and not the numbers. And that's where the wisdom comes in, because you don't associate animals with the number so and so. You talk about their names and then you relate them. And that's the reason why bridging wisdom and science is so critical, that you bring insightfulness and diverse relationships. So to end, this is Amazonian tapi in Ecuador, and when I was working here in Tena, which is a part of Ecuadorial Amazon, the indigenous people decided that they decided themselves that they should protect this animal. And it was not the government initiative, or it was nothing from the outside effort to ensure that this animal is being protected. So, but I suppose what is required is that the people, when they engage and they know that they have to coexist, they don't need any external force to suggest them that conservation is important and protection is important. They are fully aware. It's just that one needs a kind of a support. So that's where Yeah, and that's where the aspect of why the coexistence is requires to be recognized. I think we can have a short discussion before I can move to the. Thank you.
If anyone has any questions.
Hi, I'd like to know if the indigenous people have a certain way of mapping populations if they don't have access to, tags and things like that, like scientific instruments. What are some methods that they may use to map the population of the animals that they want to preserve?
Let me clarify a disclaimer. I am not a wildlife expert here. I work mostly with indigenous people. But given the event, I brought in the more aspect of also because I worked a little bit on indigenous people and wildlife conservation. So from my basic knowledge about it, when I worked with the people in Ladakh, with the snow leopards who have been living in the mountainous Tibetan plateau with the snow leopards as part and parcel of their daily existence. So these are the pastoralist communities who move from. These are the nomadic pastoralist communities. So they move from one place to the other, and it depends on the summer and winter pattern. Now these are the people who identify, and they can tell you exactly this is the snow leopard, and this snow leopard has given birth to two cubs. So they don't require a tag, they don't require, and honestly I still don't understand this knowledge, but they can distinguish between the different snow leopards, and they know in their area how many snow leopards are there. So I guess this entire scientific aspect of tagging might not be as essential if one engages the local pastoralist communities, because it's just like how we identify the street dogs on the for us that might be more easier identification, but for them they are observing the animals daily, like if not daily, they can't sight daily, but often. So that's the important aspect of how they know what kind of wildlife they have around.
Thank you very much for that fascinating talk. So I have an experience to share with you, and I want you to tell me whether you had similar experience. This is about indigenous people in America, Native Americans. So I was doing a project on diabetic retinopathy. I'm an ophthalmologist, and we identified these settlings of the Native Americans in Palm Springs, around one of the most posh areas of California. And we had set up a system for taking the photographs of their retina so that we can identify diabetic retinopathy. They had a very high incidence of diabetes, about 15%. Most of them were alcoholics, and the healthcare was very poor. So we were kind of doing good, and this is where this thing about science versus wisdom comes. So we went there with our cameras and with the whole team, very excited that we're going to do something good for them and prevent blindness, because they were going blind literally. Then we met the chief and we told them what we want to do. He knew that we are coming, and they point blank refused to get photographs done because they said, "I is the soul, and we will not let you take photos of the eye." So my question to you is, have you experienced this kind of resistance to science by the indigenous population? We are trying to do good for them, but they feel we are somehow, intruding in their tradition and their this thing.
Yeah, all the time. So when I worked in Tayrona in Colombia, these are the remote indigenous population living in the hills of Tayrona, and they completely isolated themselves from the world, and they weave their own clothes, they weave their own bags, and they are self-dependent. So any effort to go and talk to them about anything related to health or with regard to even taking their photographs. I have now never managed to get a single photograph of the Iranian community. So therefore, I didn't put up most of the photographs of the people because I don't have consent from them, and I don't want to put up any photographs without their consent. So it's also out of respect that one needs to accept what they are proposing. A bit of time in building the trust and being there, and then probably expecting some mutual sharing. But just going there, capturing the photographs, and trying to come back and use it, it's inappropriate in their
So
world.
how do you deal? You go there and sit with them and
Yes.
talk to them?
Yes. So for example, I stayed with the pastoralist communities which I was just mentioning in Ladakh for 3 months in the harsh weather of minus 35 degree. So you have to, and then they see a single woman staying with you with that kind of weather, and then they allow you to do the video. So it's not that easy to just go and capture, and then they will help you to say that I'll give you better. You want this, I'll give you better place to get that information or knowledge. So I suppose it requires time because they have experienced so much of negativity from the world that they now need the trust to really understand. And especially in Native American, the land has been taken away for their drilling and a lot of negative impact they have. So that's another aspect that they need to develop the trust.
There's another very interesting fact that I recently learned from Noah Harari's book. When the Europeans went to US, the native population was almost wiped out. And the main reason was not the wars, the violence, the killing. 75% of the native population died because of the bugs, the bacteria, the new
Immunity level.
immunity wasn't there, and that's how they killed. So obviously they are, very suspicious of somebody coming from outside. Thank you.
Thanks, Purabi again. I have one objection. When you talk, say, India is not like millions of Indians are being taken out of the forests. So be specific. I've worked in forests for almost 37 years, from Andamans to Goa to Arunachal. You can't actually, there are so many examples where the indigenous knowledge and their rights are being protected. The best example I give, was of Andaman, the Sentinels. We will stop touching them because we can, as you mentioned, the infection. They are not having, even when the Britishers first occupied Andaman Islands, they were killed largely with the influenza. They didn't have common cold during that, resistance against that. So that's one request. You showed a photograph of Khejri, the tree. So that's a missionary community, and they are the protector. And the large area, they protect themselves. We don't go even there, and they are the better protector than what we can do in such a harsh landscape of Rajasthan desert. So another example, you go to like northeast, Arunachal, all the tribal communities, they own everything. We can take n number of examples where they are the bosses, and our act is there, but hunting is allowed. We don't even look at that side because for one country having a single act is not possible, but that has been done in the past. So we have local acts, local this thing, but overall like Forest Conservation Rights Act, that's again issues are there. But those people who are being removed is actually just the tiger reserves, where rights have to be settled and have not been settled. There are again very good examples from MP Kana, where Mr. Pawar, when he was director over there, the village tiger director later on, he has shifted them such beautifully and with all their rights being taken care of, and they live as the way they want to live. So that's my request.
Thank you so much for clarifying and bringing the perspectives from the Forest Department. Really appreciate. I think I'm completely admire the Forest Rights Act and the way India has. I mean, one should applaud India for bringing these rights after 60 years to undo the injustice. So that's and that's important aspect of recognizing it. However, there, as you pointed out, there are certain incidences, and one should be more clearly specific about and not generalizing the entire country. So I completely accept that. Thank you.
Coming closer to Goa, I was also thinking that the science that you say, that the wisdom, the tradition, there is some interconnectedness because we talk about this Lairai festival in Sirigao village, So that small village of Sirigao has the tradition of having this Lairai festival for like hundreds of years. Now the mining is happened on the side of the village, okay? So because of the mining, their whole water body is gone down, and if you see the drone shots, you will see the craters of the mining, and the uh, small village of Sirigao is there, and there's going to be eviction soon because the new lease have, because all the iron ore is gone from the nearby areas. Now the iron ore is just below the village, so there's going to be eviction soon. And it was a very abandoned village because imagine in the Lyra festival happens in May. In the heat of the May, they can still accommodate like thousands of people with water and agriculture. It was abandoned, but it's all gone now. So, so in this context, which is going to happen soon, and we are like pretty helpless to do anything about it. So that is why I think like science, traditional wisdom should come together. I don't know what is the way out for that. If you have any ideas, you can because you have seen so many communities in South America and across the world. Are there any way out?
Well, I think one of the challenges that the local communities always have to struggle to raise the voice, and they need that support from general public around who would accept. So this kind of event or this kind of effort to kind of highlight their effort should be made more public to gain the attention. I think that would be ideal, because even today, I mean, the place where I live in my apartment, many people doesn't know there are indigenous people in Goa. So, and these are, I find like maybe they don't know what the indigenous people the term means, but then probably they have a different local term for it. But then what is required is a little bit more awareness of bringing those people who are very key in trying to give the support. But as you asked, my experience, it has always been very challenging. I mean, let me put this example from Sweden, where the Kiruna is the north part of near the Arctic Circle, and this entire village of Kiruna has been moved because of the mining. And if you have read the news last month, they removed the entire church. They carried the church from one part of the Kiruna to the outside, to the resettled area, because that was the only part of the landmark of the traditional identity of Sami people, the Sami indigenous people that was remaining. So now they removed the entire, from the underground, they removed the church, and they moved all the way to the outside. So that's one that's one way of how government has managed to say that, we are giving you different location altogether. You continue your celebration, you continue your identity in that part of the world, and we leave this for mining. So there is always a challenge, because we are a growing society that demands so much of minerals. Something we need to question ourselves: do we really need minerals? And then say that, oh no, the government is doing bad. Government is doing what we are asking them to do. So it's something that we need to be very conscious about.
I just read this news of this last month of the church moving, but it entered in new light. They are saying, see, technologically we are so advanced that we can move. There's no one an iota of word about this indigenous
Sami.
community.
Yeah.
Nothing came out. It's about like how they are mobilizing the community and moving the church. Like then half of the people will not know.
I mean, many people doesn't know that Western world has indigenous people. So Sami, for example, is struggling there. They are struggling for their livelihood. So these are the reindeer herders. They are the pastoralist communities, and of course, it's challenge because mineral is there in that part of the world.
We have to be working with
Go ahead, why don't you say?
same thing because you know that thing.
It's very interesting. You talk about Sami people. So we are trying to organize, hopefully, it will be sometime next year in April. A whole kind of week possibly, or definitely a couple of days of people from Norway, Sami people who are coming and doing a cultural program, talk about their life, talk about their traditions. Because I recently visited Norway, I have very good friends there, and I attended two of their musical evenings. And they're such nice people, and their dresses are almost like our Kashmiri and that kind of thing. So I got very excited. I asked them would they be willing to come, and they said yes, we would love to come to India. So
Oh wow, that's a very fantastic
if
event.
you
So I
can
look
be
forward
part
to
of
it.
that, I think with Nilankur and Shraddha, if you guys can get together so that you're also share your experiences and yeah, Nilankur, thank you.
Anybody have any more questions? I have a question. So, I was just thinking about how, for somebody who's worked so much with the indigenous community and somebody from another part of the world with another kind of life, how do you remove your gaze and sort of like, what are some practices that you follow as a scholar, as a researcher, to sort of remove that gaze and or even how to operate with that case in a way that is respectful, in a way that doesn't romanticize too much, and turn it into something that is just about the fluff, but not really dealing with the. So how do you sort of operate in that space? And another question was, while when we talk about science and art and indigenous communities sort of coming together, we have the science part of things going to them, but where's the part of them also coming to the sciences? Like how much of their representation do you think is needed in the sciences for the science itself to become not just sensitive but aware of what is happening, not from an outsider's gaze but from them itself? Because even when we are talking here today, there's a lot of us and them and those people that is constantly there. Right? So what will it take to get those people here to be a part of the conversation in your sort of experience?
Thanks for raising these queries. I mean, these are the questions that I question myself oftentimes, and the gaze part is definitely one of the important element. But one of the aspect is that that I didn't mention is my mother is my grandfather. My maternal grandfather was Santhal tribe. So that I have that background ancestry of Santhal tribe in me through my mother's and through upbringing. So that kept me humble in some way of respecting the indigenous culture, because my mother was not literate according to the Western criteria, but she was very knowledgeable, and that aspect. Then you go out and when you meet people, then you start thinking of how to respect. It comes automatically. It doesn't take an effort, because then you see everyone from your family perspective as such. And the second part is that you need to know the language of the people, and that's my way of connecting. So wherever I went, I learned the language of the local community, if not at least the regional language. In Latin America, I speak Quechua. When I did my PhD from Bhil in Rajasthan, so I speak Bhili, and it takes long time. So to learn the language and to connect with the people, I think I don't publish a lot. The reason is because when I go there, I spend my time, I work with the community, and then connect with them, and then publish. So there are, of course, different ways of how people see science as such, of having a lot of publications or having some, but where people are contributing. Coming to the film is one way of expressing how I wanted to have their own voice. When I was 2015, when I lost my mother, I decided that I would like to use the money to kind of reach out to all the indigenous communities. So I traveled all over India in 32 states. In the remotest part of all India, I made 5 films from it was all self-funded. And one element of my motivation was that I want to have people's voice. There will be no script, there will be no voiceover from anybody. It will be the people who are going to talk, and the script will be decided by the people. So the films, short clipping that you are going to see is partly that element of where you allow, it's not just I am bringing the media to them, but they are making the decision of what kind of story they want to share with them. It's a time consuming, it's a lot of money, resources, but yeah, but that's where it brings us to the film where people are talking about why they prefer community rights over individual. Individual right is good, but they still want to have the community rights, and they also talk about wildlife aspect. Thank you again.